p.m. Exactly. On Thursday, February 28th, 2019. Welcome to the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board of the City of San Angelo, Texas. Public comments. The board takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on an item not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the board at this time. The board may request an item to be placed on a future agenda or a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. That said, do we have any public comment not related to the agenda item?
Good afternoon, Brent Casey, Recreation Manager. So you all know we had Bertha Garcia, who's been in the Park and Recreation Office, retired January 31st of 2019. So we got to work right away to fill her position, and we were very lucky to find Miss Danielle Williamson. So we want to introduce her to the board and let her come up and say hi real quick.
Hi, I'm very excited to be part of the team.
You're welcome. It's a great team.
I'm very excited to be a part of the team. Thank you.
Any other comment from the public not on the agenda items? Al, you have anything?
I don't think
No?
there's any more.
Okay, good. So in that case, we're going to the consent agenda. Consideration approving the January 24th to 19 meeting minutes. Any comments or modification, additions from the board members? You have a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes as read.
Thank you, Mr. Durski. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Everybody, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody opposed? So that's approved. Now we're going to the regular agenda. There's one or two things to tell you about. The number 6 we'll get right after number 2 because it's linked to our Director of Communications. And the second thing is that the item number 5 will be postponed and presented at another time. So, Carl, if you want to introduce our speaker, please.
Yes.
Well, I need to remember to the board members who were not here the last time we asked some questions about our advertising. We talked about social media. We talked about some social networking. And we were told that the city had a site and that site could be used to promote all parts of the cities, including the parks and recreation. So that's why we have the presence of Anthony Wilson here to help us.
Yes, we can start without the slides.
Good afternoon. I'm Anthony Wilson. I am the Communications Director for the City of San Angelo. I am half of the two-man Public Information Office, or as Mr. Hampton likes to call it, the award-winning propaganda machine. I appreciate that, Mr. Hampton. So, one moment. So I was asked to come here and just talk a little bit about how our office helps the Parks and Recreation Department with communicating its activities to the community. And I want to give you just a short history of our approach when it comes to social media in particular. The City of San Angelo got on Facebook and Twitter back in 2009. And at that time, we had a very different strategy than what we have today. Back then, we had a lot of different pages that covered a lot of different niche audiences. And what we found during the next 4 or 5 years was that what we were really doing was just segmenting the audience in a lot of different ways. And so people who were, for instance, interested in economic development, were never learning about the things that were going on in Parks and Recreation, and people who were interested in the planning department weren't learning about what was going on in Costa DC, for instance. So we made a strategic effort to consolidate all those pages into one page, the City of San Angelo Public Information Facebook page. And I think that has proven to be very successful for us. And in fact, a lot of my peers across the state have since adopted that model. Because today, if we have something important to communicate, it reaches all of our nearly 29,000 followers. So people, I think, don't always know what it is that they want and need to know that's going on within their city government. And so we tend to sort of shotgun blast all that out to everybody, so everybody has a chance to access that information, regardless of whether they're interested in water issues, for instance, or whether they're interested in parks and recreation issues. Today, as I mentioned, as of today, we have 28,938 followers on Facebook. That is larger than the Facebook followings for the cities of Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, Fort Worth, and El Paso. And one of the reasons that we have been so successful in cultivating that audience is because we are very aggressive in our use of Facebook. And so just a show of hands, are any of you following the city's Facebook page? So about 3 or 4, about half of you guys. So you see then that we post a lot, frequently, multiple times every single day. And it's really become our go-to platform, particularly when it comes to video. We have an Emmy Award-winning videographer on our staff, and he does fantastic work. And so one of the great ways that we have in reaching people with items of information, importance, and impact are through his videos using that particular platform. This past month, from January 29th to February 28th, we had a total reach of 283,000 people. So that's how many people we reached over. Some of those are, of course, the same people, but that was our organic reach over the past month. So I like to say San Angelo is a Facebook fanatical town. We are on Twitter, as I mentioned, but not nearly as much. We have about 5,500 followers on Twitter. We've tweeted 16,600 times to date. And so most of what we put on Facebook, we also put on Twitter, but not everything, because those are two platforms with their own particular audiences and own particular strategies. We are also on YouTube. We've had 1.1 million views on YouTube since we started on YouTube. We have well over 1,000 videos listed on YouTube. We, of course, have SATV, which is our governmental access channel, channel 17 on the Sunlink system. And we don't have Nielsen ratings for that channel, but anecdotally, I can tell you that I never get to go to the grocery store without being accosted by a citizen who has a question about something, and it's because they see my face on SATV. We also operate and oversee CosaTX.us. That is the city's website, although every department and division is responsible for maintaining their own page, and I think our Parks and Recreation departments as a whole do a really good job of maintaining that. We have standing spots on the morning shows of KLST every Monday morning and KIDY every Wednesday morning, and we make liberal use of our Parks and Recreation staff in going onto those shows and talking about things like Daddy-Daughter Date Night, which we just recently had a couple of weeks ago. You may see in the Standard Times on Sundays, we have our leisure time columns. Those are written by our Parks and Recreation managers. We've been doing that for, oh golly, probably 7 or 8 years now. And so each of our managers writes those. It's a rotation. And then we also post those on our social media as well. And then we also work really well, I think, with our local media. And so a lot of things that that our office produce, you will see in the Standard Times or on San Angelo Live or on one of our local TV stations. So as I mentioned, we work really closely with our Parks and Recreation department. We've recently developed a nature center show. Whatever Brent and his folks or Carl and his folks want us to post, we always accommodate that. I mentioned the leisure time columns. And then we also do a lot of interviews in our new studio for SATV We recently did some interviews with our Parks and Recreation staff regarding Daddy-Daughter Date Night. We had back in the fall, we had Brent and Sydney Walker talking about Riverfest, and so we do a lot of those sort of things as well. And so I think as a whole, we've been pretty successful in our efforts. I mentioned we are an award-winning office over the past 6 years. We've won somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 awards on the local, state, and national levels. And so I think that we're pretty good at what we do. Now, Carl told me that some of you had a question as to why Parks and Recreation, for instance, doesn't have its own Facebook page. And I get this question not as frequently as I used to, but occasionally from some of my peers. And so whenever that question comes to me, I always ask them this: how long do you think it will take you to cultivate 29,000 followers? Any guesses? I'll tell you the answer is never. So no one department within our organization is going to be able to develop the sort of following that we have on social media. And therefore, it's just really better if, as we are doing right now, when Parks and Recreation wants something on SATV, or if they want something on our social media, they come to that and we plug into that really large audience. So in a nutshell, that's what we do and why we do it, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you. Any questions? The board, members? Well, you seem to have done a great job.
I'll take a seat.
But the last thing you said was interesting, because you said when we have a need, we could come to you. There will be a need pretty soon.
I understand that's next on the agenda, so I'll sit down and listen for a moment.
And that's the on the agenda. That's number 6 that we'll discuss what we want to do. But definitely there's a very strong interest from the Parks and Recreation to be part of the San Angelo Gives campaign. However we orient that, but this is what we'll be discussing. But what can we do to make aware the people of San Angelo that they can give to the Parks and Recreation? It's an arm of it's public arm. It's an arm of the city. You would think, well, we can give only to the nonprofit. Not that Parks and Recreation is for profit. But anyway, how can we manage that?
So many different ways. I would expect that Carl would probably write his leisure time column on this effort as the time approaches, and I think that's a really good way of doing that. And of course, we'll post that on our website and our social media. I would book Carl or someone in his stead if he wants to go on those morning talk shows that I mentioned on KLSD and KIDY in the week leading up to this effort. We will obviously do some things on our social media. We will put it on the homepage of COSATX.us, and we'll do a little in-studio interview as well about the possibility of people on that day giving to the Unidad Park effort. So I think there's lots of different opportunities that we can plug into, and in this regard, we're probably a little bit more fortunate than a lot of the other nonprofit agencies in town that don't have a communications office, that have their own TV station and website and so forth. So, or standing spots in the local newspaper and on local television. So I think that will help. And so we'll just do our best to get the word out there.
Great, thank you. Any other questions please, Steve?
Anthony, I think y'all do a great job, and though I'm frustrated by it sometimes, and I made that comment, I appreciate what you do. I was sitting here wondering that since you're so good at it, why is it that we can't use this arm to make the city some money in regular advertisement? Is there some kind of rule against that?
There is.
There is? Okay.
Yeah, I've spoken to the city attorney about the possibility of, running some paid advertising on SATV It would not be appropriate on our website or our social media. That's a very slippery slope. And so the city attorney has assured me that those are things that are not really available to us.
Well, I mean, it's just we're always in need of financing park and recreation things so we can do more for the community. So that I just was.
Well, and I do think we are fortunate. You know, Carl and I are staff liaisons to McLaughlin Advertising, which does actually sell some paid advertising in city facilities and in city venues and naming rights. And so there is a revenue stream that wasn't here. I don't know if you know or not, Steve, but before I became the public information officer 6 years ago, I was the civic events manager for 5 years. And so working with Carl, we actually came up with the idea of selling advertising in some of our venues. And I think Parks and Recreation, along with the airport, collect the vast majority of those funds. So, we try to be creative in that regard, but always open to ideas.
Okay. Thank you.
When there's an opportunity for, say, a building that the city's building, for example, the Spur Arena, and we name a lot of the buildings out at the Coliseum after companies and this and that. How do we put the information out about that when there might be an opportunity coming up for someone to have a building or a structure named after them?
Yeah, we really haven't had many of those sort of opportunities because most of the buildings that for which there might be naming rights, the naming rights have already been sold, and I guess it's proven successful because the holders of those naming rights have always wanted to re-up, and typically for more dollars than they originally did. And so, should the opportunity come up, we would definitely market that. We did that whenever the naming rights for the Coliseum became available, and as you know, now it's Foster Communications Coliseum as a result of that effort. And so,
And the pool.
and the pool as well. Yeah, we marketed when the pool was built. We definitely wanted to do some naming rights for that, and working with McLaughlin Advertising, they were able to secure a sponsorship from just a private family who wanted the pool named after their family.
I just think that's a great opportunity in the future as we come up with new developments around the city of San Angelo. That might be a great opportunity,
Yeah,
and you'd be
I definitely agree, and I don't know if Carl remembers this or not, but I was very mercenary about this. I mean, I was, if we wanted to sell naming
Yes.
rights to City Hall,
I remember.
let's go for it. But there was some resistance about some of that stuff. But yeah, I think that's a great way to relieve a little bit of the tax burden on our local homeowners.
Any other questions or comments? No, I guess we thank you very much. It was very informative.
My pleasure. If you ever want me to come back and talk about anything or listen to ideas, I'm happy to do so.
Great, wonderful. Okay, well, we could go on with the rest of the number 6, which is the discussion on the annual San Angelo Gives campaign and potentially designation of the Unidad Park playground refurbishment as the project for receiving donations this year. Okay, Carl, so you have an opinion here and need to share with the group.
Yes, San Angelo Gives. I don't remember how many years it's been going on, maybe 4 or 5 years now. We participated in it. The first couple of years, I don't think we participated. We participated 1 year, 2 years ago, and when we did, it was just general parks and recreation programs, nothing specific. We did get some money, some donations. It wasn't a lot. Last year we did not participate, and I've watched over at Fort Concho when they participate in San Angelo Gives, they target a specific project, whether it's exhibits or something specific. So I thought that might be a better way to approach it. They have some success doing that, and so to be able to participate in San Angelo Gives, we do have to have a recommendation from the board stating that you're okay with participating. Take that recommendation, and if you recommend we do participate, then I apply for it, and then we participate. So this year the thought is we're getting close to the refurbishment of Unidad Park Playground. It's on the CIP. It's partially funded. The playground was added as an all-inclusive playground, if you remember, in the late 90s. So it's approaching it's 20 years plus. It's approaching the end of its life. And if you've been to the playground, you've noticed that it's showing some age. It's been well loved and well used. The fall zone material is pretty well worn. We've kept it maintained as best we can, but it's at the point where it needs to be replaced. We estimate the cost to be about $350,000. We have half those funds secured from half-cent sales tax dedicated to park improvements. We're working towards securing the other half. In terms of timing, we're going to get back onto Brentwood Park renovation this spring, finish that. My hope is we get some money from San Angelo Gives and some grant funds. We'll talk about grant funding later. And so that we'll be able to have those funds in place to be able to do the playground right after we finish Brentwood Park renovation. Here's some pictures of the playground. If you look closer, you know it doesn't look, the playground itself, equipment doesn't look that bad, but when you get closer, you see it's well worn. And of course, the fall zone material is definitely in need of replacement. And that's one of the, it's very expensive to do that port in place, but it's the ideal kind of situation to go for, but it's very expensive. It's basically half the cost to do the renovation. Essentially, we'll refurbish these play sets. They would basically have the same layout, but all new panels, new slides, new activities. This area would stay a tot area. There's like a track right here, like a little zip line. This is the sand playing area, basketball hoop. This is like a wheelchair seesaw. This is an inclusive merry-go-round and a tire swing, which is already there, but we'll replace it. And so we need a favorable recommendation to participate in San Angelo Gives, as this is a specific project.
There's really two questions. First question is, do we want to have a designation instead of having Parks and Recreation? And number two, is the designation we want be Unilight Park? So I think I will open the floor here and get ideas and questions for you, Carl. See if we can get to a consensus. Mr. Hampton, you had a concern.
Yeah, we were at the planning meeting the other day, and they were talking about doing a master plan on the Red Arroyo because of they're wanting to reconstruct the College Hills street through there, and I was wondering, is Unidad the park that we want to choose if they're going to master plan the Red Arroyo and change it up and be working on it, and also College Hills? That's going to limit your access to it, and they may do something that changes the flow of things somehow, and that negatively is what I was thinking. Making mounds or something through there for flooding. I don't know. I don't know exactly. They weren't clear on exactly what they were thinking. They were talking ponds and what have you, but nothing real specific and where. So that's what fired off in my mind. And while you were speaking, I was wondering about most of these, like the swing set and everything, that's all steel. I don't see how that gets worn out. Now the plastic is in good condition, but it's a little sun bleached,
That's essentially what we do. Basically, we keep the decks and we keep the posts, and we replace the plastic parts and the parts that you interact with.
Right.
For the main playground.
And you're going to replace that rubber, sprayed on a rubber, just the way it is. Now over at Meadow Creek, you put wood. You put down wood chips.
Right. We do the engineered wood fiber for most of our playgrounds. It's more cost efficient up front, but you have to supplement it every other year or two with additional engineered wood fiber. If you have the money, the poured in place material like we have here at Unidad is the way to go. It's just very expensive. And we would like to keep it here because that's the way it is now. That's the way it was originally designed, to be an all-inclusive playground with little inhibitions to be able to interact, for kids to interact with the playground.
And it's a little bit more easily accessed by handicap.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Which is what that park was set up to do.
I don't know if,
That's my survey of the park, so this one looks like it gets probably the most use of any place in town. Would that be true?
It used to be the number one. It does have two rivals, the Kids Kingdom Playground and the playground at Kirby Park, but it's one of the top ones.
Like there's traffic there all the time, so.
And part of the reason why it may have slowed down a little bit is because it's seeing its age.
What do you know about this project of widening and redoing College Hills Boulevard? And
My understanding of the project is there is some drainage work to be done, but my understanding is it won't affect this piece of property here where the playground is. It would likely affect access along College Hills, but to what extent, I don't know. But there's no rerouting. Any kind of water detention area that's done wouldn't be in this area. So if there is limited access on College Hills, you can still access the playground from a different direction, from the west during that time. But my understanding is that it's basically redoing the roadway and improving some of the drainage in that area.
any other question for Carl regarding Unidad Park as a destination?
And my understanding is it would probably be 2 to 3 years from now, and
Yeah.
this could be done before that project, the road
Okay.
project, is being worked on.
Ask a question. What other potential projects are there that would be suitable for San Angelo Gibbs besides Unidad Park?
The thought is that we've got money already allocated to this project. I want to just ensure that we get all the money we need to do it. So the problem is if we get some money for some projects, we're not talking a whole lot of money that we can get, maybe $4,000 to $5,000. So it could be for some landscaping of an existing park. We could put it towards restrooms at MLK, for instance, but we need a lot more money than that to do that project. So
Well, that's what I was just wondering, because this one's partially funded,
right, that's the thought. It's partially funded.
and you would have more ability to get an impact on a specific project. That's something that you can see that lasts as opposed to just landscaping.
Right.
Okay.
I thought the bathrooms were gonna come under, were less than this project. You had 350 on here, and I think the bathrooms were 250, weren't they?
25, 250.
Yeah.
Yes, but we do have half of the funding for
But
this.
there were 2 bathrooms.
Yes, so one for Glenmore, one for MLK.
And it was another name,
Glenmore Park and,
Glenmore, yeah.
right.
That was on the last agenda.
Those two projects are on the CIP, but they're unfunded. They have no funding. This project has funding for it. It has half the funding we need for it. And we have to go out
I
for
see,
grants.
that's where you're getting that, okay.
Yes. We need to go out we need to apply for a grant, likely the Health Foundation, and secure other funding to match what we have.
What about the new one that you want to initiate over on Twin Mountain Drive?
It's going to take a lot more money than what we think we can get to start that. And first of all, we need to figure out where that might be and acquire that property,
Oh, okay,
which may tie into another discussion item we have on the master plan. We're hoping the master plan will help kind of focus in on areas where we need to acquire property.
excuse me, one more question. Do you do studies on where children are? Where the greatest majority of children live? Maybe the Unidad Park used to be the #1 place because there were a lot of children in the neighborhood. Now the population has moved somewhere else for young families, first starter homes, and that kind of stuff.
The master plan can help us with that. This is a traditionally very popular park. The Red Arroyo Trail was added there, which has added to its popularity. The dog park is there. It's on a fairly well-known roadway, which is College Hills. It's near a school already. It's near a large residential area. Anecdotally, it is a place where lots of families and kids go.
I might add, it has lots of ground squirrels there too.
Yes, it
Lots
does.
and lots of ground squirrels.
Yes,
It looks like
does.
Gopher City.
We do work to mitigate that problem.
Yeah.
Do we have any other question or comment on the board?
I'll just make a comment. I think as far as the opportunity, as far as taking advantage of this opportunity of San Angelo gives, I think of any project, Unidad Park is probably the best prospect because of just the nature of the park being all-inclusive. That is going to, I think, encourage people to donate. So just as far as taking advantage of that specific opportunity is probably the best bet for getting the most money possible, is just my thought.
Thank you, Ms. Watkins. Anybody else on the board? Then what about the public? Do we have any comment or questions? No? In that,
There's another item where we talk about projects, if they want to talk about the restrooms.
okay, but we talk about the next item.
Yes.
Okay. So we have been required by Carl to look at this San Angelo Give campaign and designating the Unidad Park Playground refurbishment as a project for receiving donations this year. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Durski.
I'll second that.
Mrs. Wilson, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, it passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Now we go to the next, in the original order, which is continued discussion on commissioning a new park and recreation strategic master plan, including an active living plan and recommending any related matters. So, Mr. White, where are we with the master plan?
So we're at the position where we're ready to put out an RFP, not an RFQ. We have the funds in place. Currently, in the past, what's been done are 4 master plans, one done in 1967, which is a neat little document if you haven't seen it. It talks about a lot of development along the river. And then I got here in 2000. We were already in the process of doing a master plan. We finished in 2001. We did an update in 2005, and then we did a new one in 2012. These typically have a shelf life of 5 years in terms of giving us good direction on where we need to focus on in terms of acquiring properties, developing park facilities, doing recreation programs, changing recreation programs based on the public's comment in the survey. We do have the funding in place. Like I mentioned, this plan is a little bit different in that it'll have an appendix that has an active living plan, and Sandra Villarreal is here from the health department that can help talk about that. But as the RFP is ready to go out, it's going to go out Monday or Tuesday. In terms of how we funded this year, and these typically run about $60,000-$70,000, we got authorization to move about $38,000 from department savings, basically park salaries that we were able to capture from unfilled positions. And then Sandra has a grant from the Texas Healthy Communities for about $33,000. These plans, these are the basic parts of these plans. One is an inventory. It has an inventory of all of our park and recreation facilities, an inventory of all our recreation programs that we have ongoing. It has a public survey and the results of that survey, and then it goes into analyzing that survey, and then shows us what the public really wants in terms of their facilities, whether it's renovations, new facilities, getting rid of existing facilities, doing something different, recreation programs, and prioritizes those. And then it goes into a section where it talks about strategies of how to do that. New to this time would be the active living plan. I mentioned that last time. And in your background was a copy of, I believe I sent out the one from Lubbock that was done a few years ago. And Sandra, could you come up and kind of explain what that is?
Good afternoon. I am Sandra Villarreal, and I am the Director of Health for the City of San Angelo. And one of the grants that has been given to the Health Department is the Texas Healthy Communities Grant. And from that grant, this particular year, the program has allowed us to basically partner with the Parks and Recreation to come up with, or to, well, again, update the master plan, however, adding this active living plan as part of the Texas Healthy Communities. Really, it is just a plan designed by 8 different sectors of the community. And I want to go ahead and read those to you because we want to try to bring those 8 sectors into play. And they all, basically, the thought is that every sector has something to provide or somehow can promote an active living community, thereby decreasing disease and improving the quality of life in the city and our community. Those 8 sectors are business and industry, recreation, fitness and parks, education, the nonprofit sector, healthcare, mass media, public health, the sports industry, and then transportation, land use, and community design, which is basically local governments. So anyway, basically what the plan is really coming up with a plan that would focus our work on policies and programs to increase physical activity, and that essentially is, in its simplest form, is what we want to do. And this program the funding has allowed us to do that, and also help the recreation department to fund the master plan. So it's a small portion of it. There's different plans out there, very simple, but again, just gives the community and these 8 sectors something to work on and focus on in order to improve the quality of life and the environments that we live in. And for example, I'm looking at the Hidalgo County Living Plan. And for, let's say, Parks and Recreation, okay, so the partner is, what is their contribution? Well, provide space and promote physical activity through sports leagues, or provide safe places for physical activity. The mass media, their role is, let's say, television, print, radio, whether it's out in the public sector or us as the PIO, communicate the benefits of physical activity and the risks of sedentary lifestyle, or promote and report on physical activity opportunities. So each of these 8 sectors would have some type of role, whether a small role or a large role, in order to, again, promote that physical activity and improve our community. And so it's kind of in a nutshell, that's what that is, that plan. So we were just really wanting to partner with Parks and Rec, and we can provide a portion of the funds to do that. And so, any questions?
I have a question. Sure. How do you get feedback from the different sectors?
Well, and we have partnered with Parks and Rec, and so when they've got the meetings and the public meetings, we need to try to get these 8 sectors at the table so that they can also provide some kind of input into the plan. So, and that's
Are you the spokesperson for the
I'm the
active-
liaison for the Texas Healthy Communities to the Department of State Health Services.
Essentially, the consultant will
But the consultant would be
do the bulk of the work.
yeah.
We just have to help facilitate. It'll include public meetings, a public survey, maybe a focus group meeting or two.
Exactly. So really, it's basically piggybacking to what they will already be doing. It's just adding another element to it.
And
so-
adding the funds to help us.
and adding the funds to do
Yeah,
it,
that's
exactly.
great.
On a public survey, do you use the webpage and that kind of, where do you primarily go for that? Do you,
We use our public information office, so we would definitely use our PIO office for that. And any other methods that the consultants would imagine.
Right.
Yes, surveys and public meetings, and, we would address some of those things at those meetings. But again, it's using the public information office to put out the message that this is what we're doing. Very similar to what we're doing now with the CIP. We've got a survey out there, and so they've already sent out press releases and those types of things asking the public for information. And so it's, I would say, very similar to that.
The idea of prioritization, is that for projects? That's
This is
recommended?
really more just focusing what the community can work on. How can we focus on just doing something very simple like what I said, provide an outlet for physical activity through Parks and Rec. And so, simple things in each of these sectors can do something to basically increase awareness of and the importance of physical activity.
Well, in the last plan, I think there was a recommendation. Number one in the survey was a multi-generational center. Would they come up with the same type of ideas to tell us what we, as a community, what we need more? Or what's the perception,
Right.
at least?
In terms of facilities and programs.
Okay.
And we haven't drafted the survey yet, so.
No, but
Right.
Yeah,
But I'm
that's-
saying, when we put the survey out, we'll get the input back from the citizens telling us what they want in terms of facilities and programs.
as far as organization able to provide us with grants, do they consider the acting living plan as a necessary part of the master plan?
It's not necessarily part of the master plan. I could have done it by myself. It just been a totally separate plan by itself through the health department. However, if he's already going to have a consultant basically bringing people together and doing the surveys and all of these Q&As,
Health
It-
related.
and it is health related. It is all health related, and this program is allowing us to partner and to provide funding. Well, there was no reason to basically we do one and they do another when we can just
When.
combine resources and just do one plan. So that's why we're just basically going to be an appendix to the master plan.
Any more questions from the board? Do we have any questions from the floor?
Okay.
No? Yes? Please come to the podium. Go. This is about the master plan, right? Between the next. Okay. Can you state who you are?
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Shirley Spears, and I'm a resident of San Angelo. I am wondering how much the grant is that she just discussed, and for what budget period does it cover?
Mrs. Villarreal, this is a tough one.
So the grant is for $50,000, And the Department of State Health Services has allowed us to basically give or provide $30,000 to the Parks and Rec plan. And what was the second question? I'm sorry.
What budget
Oh,
year?
this year. So we've got to expend the funds this year.
6 years?
This
No,
year.
this year.
Ah,
For
this year, I'm
fiscal
sorry.
19. Yes, sir. So as long as our funds are expended by September.
Well, thank you. That's a great deal. Any other questions from the floor, public? No. So, Carl, what do you need here? The master plan is going on, or you just need one person from the board that would be interested in being part of your committee, selection committee?
Yes, and so this will go out next week. It'll be out about 3 weeks. We'll get the submittals back, and we will have a committee, and we'd like a member of the board to be a part of that committee to review the submittals and make recommendation on which firm to take to award the bid for to negotiate with to city council.
Do you have any volunteer?
Yes, I would like to volunteer to sit on the committee.
Anybody else? Well, then you're it. Thank you. Anything else on that item?
We're not looking for any action.
Okay, great. So we go to the next item, which is presentation on researching and applying for grants. I guess we got that somewhat from Mrs. Villarreal. But we have as well as funding for all projects in general. So the second part of funding other than grants, I guess, we're talking about. So
we will be talking about grants as part of this project, but as part of this item. But this item is really talking about funding of projects. So in terms of Parks and Recreation, we have a vast array of different projects. A lot of them are parks projects, but not all of them. Some could be sports complexes. You've seen the projects that we've done. But at the last meeting, there was some discussion about how do we fund projects. There was some discussion about, do we get the funding first and then figure out what projects to fund? The way we've normally done it is we've identified projects either from the master plan results that we talked about, direction from city council, direction from city management, our own professional experience, and we identify those needs, and those tie into a physical improvement of some sort. And then once we know what that project is, then we go out for the funds to try to make that project happen. And funds come from different sources. It could be general fund. It could be a direct allocation from the general fund, which is usually not likely. It could be excess sales tax. More sales tax comes in than is budgeted. That does happen from time to time. We do get funds from that from time to time. Bonds, where the city borrows money to do a project, which isn't very common. House and sales tax funds. We've gotten a lot of house and sales tax funds to do a lot of our projects in the last 10 to 12 years. The river refurbishment, the Texas Bank Sports Complex, funds for park renovations, the pool project, just to name a few. As we can, and we'll talk about this separately, we go out for grants that could apply for those projects to enhance the funding for them. And sometimes, and depending on the project, we get private fundraising and donations. So some examples of projects that are recent or ongoing: the Brentwood Park renovations, that's 100% house at sales tax funds. The Middle Concho Park boat ramp project at Lake Nasworthy, that's 75% TPWD boating access grant, matched with 25% from Lake Nasworthy fund interest. The Texas Bank Sports Complex restrooms was 100% house at sales tax. The Sunken Garden Park, the sculpture gardens, we got $75,000 for design from the Development Corporation. In terms of actually developing that project, those funds are undetermined, but I believe we've been charged with trying to get as much private funds as we can for that project once it's time to develop. The sculptures, the Lady in Blue sculptures that were added recently, the Bart DeWitt Park by the river, that was 100% private fundraising. We've talked about the Unidad Park Playground. Brown and Santa Rita Park renovations. We do have asset sales tax allocated to those projects, but it won't be enough to do what we'd like to do. So we anticipate getting some private fundraising for those. Lake Nasworthy improvements. We've talked about those, and that would likely have to be from the Lake Nasworthy Fund. South Concho Park Trail. We could get 80% of that funded with the TPWD Trail Grant, matched with 20% from half-cent sales tax. The parking lot at Station 618, I think most of that was from excess sales tax revenue. So we can talk about grants, because a question came up at the last meeting. How does the city have a grant person who writes grants, and how do we get grants for different projects? But I do want to talk a little bit about the capital improvement plan. There is a draft of the capital improvement plan. The city is about to begin the process to engage the public and get input on the draft plan. The survey will go out and be out from March 4 to March 17. There is an online forum scheduled for March 7. There's a public meeting on March 12. The city council meeting on April 1 will be in part to consider the adoption of the plan. So this is good timing to talk about projects. But again, CIP doesn't necessarily fund those projects. It identifies what funding could get tagged to those projects, but it doesn't allocate funding to those projects. If you want next, I think there's some public that wants to talk related to this item, but if you want to hear from Sandra in terms of grants and how she helps us to get grants, she can come back up.
Again, I'm Sandra Villarreal, and my primary hat is Director of Health. However, I also do get asked to, on occasion, write grants. While managing my different departments and my different grants that I get for the Department of State Health Services, I have also helped out with Parks, Rec, and Civic. And so I thought I'd give you a listing of those grants that I have worked on and applied for through the Health Foundation. I think my first one was the tennis complex, the lighting of the tennis complex, excuse me. And we received $132,000 for that. The convention center here, I wrote a grant to the Health Foundation that we received $500,000. And then the Terrace Plaza at El Paseo was an award of $232,000. The Area Foundation awarded us $25,000 for the rain capture at Kirby, which is currently being worked on. And then other grants that I recently applied for was a small $10,000 grant to the Texas Rangers Foundation for 2 batting cages out at the 29th Street complex. And then, a NOAA grant for the rain capture at the Bosque. So we received $25,000 for it. In addition, I've also been asked by the fire department to write grants for them. And just this year, we received $24,000 for extrication equipment from the Firehouse Sub, so I wrote that grant. And then through our Texas Healthy Communities grant that I just spoke of, and let me give you a little bit background on that. This was supposed to be a 1-year grant, fiscal of 14, and it just progressed to a 5-year grant. However, this is our last year of funding. But the last 4 years, We have managed to provide each of 4 ambulances with defibrillators, 12 lead defibrillators at $32,000 apiece. So I've managed to save the fire department that much as well, $128,000 in the last 4 years. And I am currently this year going to apply for, and I am in the pre-application stages of 3 TxDOT grants for streets and engineering. One for the Chadburn Street Phase B, and then 2 Safe Routes to Schools grants for Ricks Drive, and then for Southwest, and those 2 are for sidewalks. So yeah, goodness, like I said, this is not a primary job for me. However, I do research grants, and if I see something, especially if, like Carl said, there has been a need that has been identified and I know about it, I sometimes will see something that actually does apply, and I'll send it to him or to whomever. And city management often will ask me, "Hey, can you work on this?" And I have. So you know, I've enjoyed it. But you know, and I try to assist as best as I can. Again, it's I try. You know, I try to manage my department as well as assist with these grants. So, any questions or any
Been very
specific
successful.
questions?
Yeah.
Well, I've tried, and you know, some are not, and you know, they can't always be successful. But you know, we do try, and so as long as there's a need and it's been identified, I really do try to research and see if I can find something.
Is there a type of project that has more chances to be supported by grants than some others?
You have to have a really specific need, and it has to be, you can't just say, I want this. It has to be, there has to be a very specific reason. You have to identify the need, and that's sometimes hard. And so you have to keep asking why, but why is this, and why, until you finally get to that bottom line, like, this is actually the need. It's not we need a playground, it's that there are however many children, or you know, somebody got hurt, or something that is very specific that identifies that you need something.
What is Sandra, isn't there a list on the internet of grants that are available? Don't they itemize them?
There are different portals. Of course, you have to be a subscriber.
Oh, okay.
Oftentimes. Now, the library, I have not been, but the library, I believe, does have a research library, and you might be able to go research. You know, we are fortunate that we do have the Area Foundation and the Health Foundation that has been very generous in the past, and I know that we are going to. Carl and I have discussed this. We're going to try to apply for the park equipment. They were the ones that funded it prior to, and so we were hoping that they will continue.
Unidad Park.
The Unidad Park, yes.
You know, there was a question on that I wanted to ask about. You had the Lubbock deal on. I know I don't want to jump subjects here, but you had Lubbock, and it also included the university and the health science. It had different parts of the university on there, and
The active living
are we
plan?
able to do that here? It kind of magnifies the
If it's a Lubbock
Focus.
active living plan that you are discussing, they probably had them as partners, and
Yeah. Are we
again,
able
as
to
part
do-
of that education sector.
Yeah.
As part of that education sector that we're talking about, we can definitely bring ASU in, SAISD, Howard,
Right.
Education
And
centers,
you do that?
preschools, Head Starts, anything that has to do with education, we can bring those into that sector, and they were, I would imagine, partners with the Lubbock Active Living Plan formation.
Well, with ASU being a part of that University of Tech, the Texas Tech system, do we have access to that same resource?
It's a possibility. I have not really
Okay.
looked into that.
And my question was, last time, is ASU help us, and it seems like this is all part of getting a master's degree and or working on your business, you know.
Like a
and
graduate
so why
work or
couldn't we get
something?
students to help us
Intern.
do some of this?
And it's a possibility. I mean, I know that I would imagine that they do have opportunities given to some of those students as to depending on what their interests are. So I would imagine we could probably get someone if we needed extra help, definitely. So statistics and those types of things, they might be able to assist us with that.
I don't know if ASU.
I know Dr. Jones, and I worked with him when I was getting my MPA.
Okay.
So I know they do a lot of statistical work.
All right. Well, it seems like we have a great need, and they have a lot of sharp minds over there that could help us, and it helps everybody if they do. Maybe we can draw more people and increase their population and yada, yada, yada. But so I appreciate what you do. I've seen great grant writers help a community a great deal in the past. And, you know, I would, as tight as I am, I'd even go for having an assistant for you to help you, you know, to get, because they would pay for themselves.
And I do try. I mean, there's a lot of needs. Matter of fact, just before I came, I sent something to the animal shelter because I believe they were talking about noise baffling, and I actually had written a grant when I was managing and overseeing animal services, and I thought, oh, maybe they can use it now. So I know that we had been successful with the Area Foundation. They had provided some funding if we gathered the other funds, but I think we're trying to, you know, or at least they are trying to.
One more question. How many grants get by us that we, because we can't write them fast enough or something like that?
I would imagine a lot, yes, sir. And then also we have to, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of time, unfortunately.
I mean, they're up there
isn't
for
lot of time.
a period and then they're taken off, right?
Well, like the Area Foundation and the Health Foundation, they take applications continuously. Now, they might provide funding only twice a year.
Well, that's just this one, but I mean other grants.
Oh yeah, gosh, there's several, and there's
yeah,
I mean there's
the
many
windows.
thousands and thousands of foundations all over the
Window
nation.
was open only a short time.
So it all depends on the need, and a lot of foundations are very, very specific as to what they want to fund. Some will only fund, let's say, education. Some will only work with projects that are for youth or the seniors. So it all depends on the need and the foundation as to what they want to fund, because they don't all fund everything. So a lot of them are very specific.
I think if the mayor is watching, this would be a great. This would be a great area. He's always talking about business and industrial development. You know, these two items of getting grants and also getting the school to put in a MBA, help us as part of helping us in this area. This could help us immensely.
In order to save some time, I would just stop the discussion here.
Yeah.
We understand that you're short of resources and you would welcome some others. Do we have comments or suggestion from the floor?
Can I
we,
say,
I think, have a group who is interested in knowing about funding of some projects.
Hold
or
on.
if you want to come forward and tell us who you are and what other questions.
I think we do have public comment, but I would want to just give some background. This item does talk about projects and its fundings, so it does open the idea to talk about what I think the public is here to talk about. What happened was there was an article that was printed in the Standard Times last Sunday that was a reprint from an article from a year ago. That the article was about the results of the survey, the public survey, related to the capital improvement plan from last year. When we did the public survey last year, each kind of core area, ours being Parks and Recreation, we're offered the opportunity to list the different projects that are our top projects and get the public to comment on those. And so when we got the results of that survey, I wrote an article about it. It appeared in the newspaper in April of 2018. It was reprinted without our knowledge last Sunday. And it does list the restrooms at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Park as a need. That project has been in our capital improvement plan for several years, and we've kept it in here, and it's in the draft, which is going forward to City Council for consideration in April. And I believe that's the project they would like to talk about.
You told me as well that there was a restroom in the park before
Yes,
the
yeah,
park was
a little bit
reconstructed.
history on that.
And everything went away, and there's no more restroom. We have just a portable restroom in place.
Right.
Okay.
We got funding to renovate that park. I can't remember how much it was. It was about 175,000. I think 175,000 from Community Development Block Grant funding in 2003, 2004. There was an existing structure there. It was basically a cinder block structure. It was on a septic system. It really was just basically a hole in the ground. And we didn't have enough money to replace the restroom or to totally retrofit it, to bring it into ADA compliant, put it on a sewer system. So we removed the restroom and put in portable restrooms. We've done that at several locations. City Park downtown we took away the restroom and put in portable restrooms. It also was on septic system. Glenmore Park, it didn't have a restroom, or did it? It did have a restroom. We took it out. To put a restroom, it was on septic system too. To put a restroom there, we'd have to put a lift station in, tied into the sewer. Brentwood Park has a portable restroom. Unidad used to, but it now has restrooms.
Can you tell us how much it would cost to build two restroom, I guess?
To put on the capital improvement plan, we've estimated the cost to be about $225,000. That's for a prefab unit, which has been the direction we've been going with lots of our projects down by the Bosque, Kids Kingdom, Producers Park, Padron Park. It's basically a prefab unit, 2 pieces, very durable, tough, tied into all the utilities, sewer, water, electricity. You have to put it on a concrete slab, and we estimate about $225,000 for that project. But this is good timing because CIP is discussion and public discussion is coming up next week, the next couple of weeks, so it's good timing.
Yeah, it was not funded in the previous. It was not funded the previous years.
That's correct.
But it could be funded as part of the CIP exercise.
Again, the CIP identifies projects, but it doesn't
Right.
allocate funding. It
Right.
talks about funding, but it doesn't necessarily allocate.
Okay, that's why
The
you
next
say
step, the first step is keep it in the CIP. The next step is to secure funding.
okay, and eventually get a grant or other things, because this is definitely a defined project. Mrs. Villarreal. Okay, no, I think we need to hear the public comment and see where we are and what is community thinking about this project. So whoever wants to speak for the group over there.
When I spoke earlier, I gave my name and simply said I was a resident of San Angelo because it was a personal question that I have. Right now, I'm standing on behalf of the San Angelo Unit 6219 of the NAACP as the president of the local unit. We've had much concern over this particular issue for several months now. I did finally have some conversation with Mr. White regarding this article that came out on Sunday erroneously and has stirred up a lot more interest and concern about the situation of the bathrooms at Martin Luther King Park on Martin Luther King Drive. And in particular, we know that from talking with Carl and from talking with some of the people who have lived here for many years, that the park has had this issue for some time of not having proper restroom facilities. I can't speak to all the data, but I know that that community is full of seniors and I'll say families who are raising children. I can't give you specific numbers, but I know that the community nearest there has a lot of seniors and parents who are raising younger children. I believe that the park could be better utilized, and we believe that as well. If there were a couple of things that were done, certainly number one, we need to have proper restroom facilities. We don't feel that it's practical to expect families to bring young children and or any of our seniors to want to go to the park because there's not proper facilities there. It's my understanding that the bathroom was changed out around 2003. We are now at 2019, and whatever those reasons were for changing it out at that time, surely there's been some interest from some appropriate level at the city to rectify and remedy that problem. And so we're very concerned that there's not been any attention to do that. In listening to Ms. Villarreal talk about the different grants that she has assisted with Parks and Rec, I didn't hear anything, unless I misunderstood Ms. Villarreal, that there had been no request or grants done in the northern sector in that area of San Angelo, and I may be misspeaking if I missed one of those. Our concern is that that is a neighborhood park, so it doesn't have a lot of fluff, if you will. But because it is a neighborhood park and because it's located in the area where there is a large minority population, and we talk about trying to make sure that we have healthy communities and walkable communities, and I know that we have put bike lanes in that community when we recently did some upgrades to the city, we find it a little interesting that we're putting the emphasis on it, and we know what some of the statistics show about Hispanics and African Americans, and those are the primary groups that live in that community, and they won't be able to go to the park because it doesn't have proper facilities. We want to make sure that in this idea that was just brought up a moment ago about getting someone to write grants, while you may look at a graduate student, I think that's appropriate. I think it also needs to be something that includes the discussion with the residents of that community as to how that grant can be best facilitated. Now, I'm not thinking that we would take a great deal of time to do that, but you have different representatives that can speak to that. Because in addition to the restroom, there are other things that we need to consider. It's just that the restrooms right now at the Martin Luther King Park is the priority. There seems to be a difference between what is provided in a neighborhood park and what is provided in a community park. And we'd like clarification on what those unique differences are. Whether it's a grant or whether it's something that we need to talk with the city council person in that area, Councilwoman Lucy Gonzalez, to help push forward the funding, we feel that the residents in that community have gone without proper facilities for long enough. We've heard discussion about how some of the other parks in the city used to be and used to not have and that kind of thing, but they've been remedied and rectified. And we are asking for immediate consideration to rectify the situation with the bathrooms in the Martin Luther King Park.
Well, thank you. Understand your point of view, definitely. I think you definitely create some awareness among ourselves about that situation, which is what you wanted to do. You wanted to know what the difference is between a neighborhood park and a community park. Maybe, Carl, you can tell us more about it.
There is a general difference, and of course, a park can be developed as the overall community wants it to be developed. But the standard is for a neighborhood park is that it serves an area of a residential area within a 10-minute walk. And so the idea is that you live in the area, you walk to the park. If you need to use the restroom, you walk back home or you walk to a friend's. That's been the traditional logic behind that. Community park has a bigger service area, a mile out, you're essentially biking to it or you're driving to it, so you're not necessarily going to be going back home, so that provides restrooms. But that doesn't mean that neighborhood parks can't have restrooms. They certainly can. So it's unfortunate we didn't have the money to replace the restrooms at the time. So that's the difference between neighborhood park and community park. And in terms of other locations where there were portable restrooms and they've been replaced, that's only been one. That was College Hills Unidad Park, and we got the restrooms primarily because of the trail grant, the federally funded state facilitated trail grant provided the trail, and we had to put restrooms in. That's why the portable restrooms were taken out and a restroom was put in there. It was because of the trail project.
Well, these are circumstances, but it's not, I guess, an excuse not to look at MLK Park as well, and the restroom related too. There's another idea that Mrs. Spears came up with, which is basically community working together with Mrs. Villarreal or anybody else to look at an ability to put together a grant request for the restroom. How can we process that? The community seems to be willing to work hard on it and support the effort. Is that, Mrs. Spear, what you were talking about? I'm sorry. Would you repeat that, please? You mentioned that the community would be able to support a grant request, and that you had several people or individuals that could help.
Yes, that is correct. We have people in the community or organizations such as representatives from, we have people in the community and or representatives from the NAACP that would be more than willing and capable to assist in that developing. And I think it's important for us to have some discussion. So there may be a need for a couple of meetings within the community so that we can talk about it. We are an organization that is concerned about the proper welfare of all residents, but I don't want this to be drawn out so that then it becomes an excuse for not being able to get anything done. I believe if you utilize us, and we are willing to do that, to sit at the table with the persons who's going to write the grant and or talk with Councilwoman Gonzalez, I think that we would be able to make some progress.
Okay, thank you. So any questions from the board members here, or for Carl or Mrs. Villarreal or Mrs. Pierce?
I have a question for Carl. Whenever
I have a comment
if you want
too.
to comment first, go ahead.
Writing a grant, I think that's possible. Just knowing the situation, it's going to be best if the city matches that money for the project to the grant. So I don't think we can do it by a grant alone. I think we need to match it. And that's why it does take some community input and community involvement to try to find the city match.
My question is related to the distinction with the neighborhood and the community parks. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are some neighborhood parks that have restrooms with them. Is that correct? Or are there any?
The ones that are neighborhood parks that have restrooms are the portable restrooms. The exception is Unidad College Hills Park, which it's kind of treated like a community park, especially now with the trail system that goes through there.
What do you classify as the community parks? The Kirby?
Basically a park it's larger in size than most of our parks that we have, about 20 acres. Like Kirby, yes, Kirby is a community park. It's purely a community park. Producers Park we call it a community park. It's pretty close to a community park in terms of size and what it has in the service area. Those are the two essentially community parks that we have by definition.
So you wouldn't count Kids Kingdom as a community park?
No, it's more of a special park.
Okay. So now we got three categories.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm just trying to figure out is what is our policy, or what has the city's policy been in the past as far as neighborhood parks having restrooms versus, how do we define which parks are going to get restrooms and which aren't?
We take it case by case, basically. So
It really
and
isn't.
it depends on the funding that we have.
There really isn't a standard then, as far as,
There is a national standard, but it's often,
no, I'm just talking about with the city,
no.
what the city has done.
I wouldn't say that the city has a
Kind
standard.
of ad hoc and whatever money's available.
Exactly.
Okay.
Depending on the size, what facilities are there.
Well, because I noticed on the unfunded improvement project sheet given us here, it also has restrooms under moderate priority, restrooms MLK, Glenmore, and City Park.
Right.
Is that correct? So has Glenmore had restrooms?
It was the same situation. It had an old cinder block restroom that was on septic system
Okay.
right next to the river.
And was it?
We didn't have the money to replace it.
So that's been removed too?
The structure was removed and we have portable restrooms.
And what about City Park? I thought that had one.
It's the same situation. It had an old block structure. It was right behind the old fire station.
Yeah.
We removed that, put in exercise equipment, and we've got portable restrooms back in the corner. So
When were those?
we treated the parks the same.
When were the ones
Based
at
on the
Glenmore
funding.
and City Park removed?
Sorry?
When were those removed at Glenmore and City Park?
Glenmore was 2006, and City Park 2008,
MLK was removed when?
2004.
Okay.
You have,
Did that during the renovation.
Of MLK?
Right. We did the renovation of MLK in 2004, then we did Glenmore, and then we did City Park. And those were all CDBG funded projects.
you have rules and, do you have written down, defining Kirby and producers as a community park?
That's how they're classified, but
There's nothing to, you
It's
don't have any
class-
standard to classify?
That's just the national standard.
right.
Oh,
okay.
national,
It's the professional standard based on its size and the facilities that it has
okay.
and the area that it services.
And Glenmore and MLK don't meet that standard?
Well, they serve as neighborhood parks, but they're so popular that they draw in more than just the neighborhood.
Okay, so we need to address those.
Yes, and that's why it's on our CIP. It's the need is identified. The funding has been
No,
the issue.
but I mean, the rules to
Yeah.
for designations need to be addressed. Maybe we can put something on our agenda for deciding those kind of things.
standards. And like I said, we usually take it case by case because a park's use does evolve over
Because,
time.
Well,
you're talking at the lake, we're gonna have parks out there. I mean, that's gonna be another one to me, and to my way of thinking.
Right. And the restrooms will be needed too.
Yeah, and the
The sewer
restrooms, we're
system
talking
will be needed.
restrooms, so we're talking large, you know.
well, I guess my concern is just if you've done the ones at Bosque and at Kids Kingdom, and those may have been special dedicated funds for those. I don't know.
Right.
But I guess my concern is just kind of a bigger picture. I mean, I do think it needs to be addressed and kept pushing on it. I'm glad citizens are here to do that, but I'm thinking in a bigger scope, we need to understand as we're developing new parks, talking about new parks as the city grows, you know, what is the city's approach? What should the city's approach be in these, you know, because what I'm hearing is that we have some parks have restrooms because it's a special park. Some don't have restrooms. Some had restrooms and now they don't have restrooms. And we've got it on the plan to get those back. But
The park I mentioned as a special park is Kids Kingdom, which is Santa Fe East. It's right across from the visitor
no,
center.
I understand.
It gets a visitation from all over.
I understand completely. But what I'm saying is, if MLK Park, if you're saying, if that also kind of falls into a special category because it draws more than just a neighborhood, then that's something, as opposed to Glenmore and City Park, you know.
Glenmore does get extra draw. than the
That's what
neighborhood.
that's what I'm saying. I don't know, and so I would just think we would need to think in the future about how we make those decisions, and for where it needs to go on the CIP plan. Because I just think that a standard of, well, we just kind of do it as needed and figure it out. I think we need to know. I think we need to know what usage the park has, what benefit it has for the community as a whole, as opposed to just a neighborhood park. Like Browns Park is just a small neighborhood park, and it's not really intended for anything other than that. But if MLK,
Logic would tell you it doesn't need a restroom.
yeah, well, so and that's what I just think that we need to have going forward is just some understanding of what the differences are between which one needs it and which one doesn't.
I think it's a great idea.
It's something for the future, but
Well, it's for the future, but it's also for now. And you're right. When you refurbish totally a park and you just forget to put the restroom that was in place before, or even if it was not the best restroom and maybe not at modern codes, still there was there. So it looks like maybe we have not done a great job. Anyway, we are 4 minutes to 5 and supposed to finish at 5. I would like to finish at 5. So what I propose that we do is that we drop number 7 that we look at next time. Is that okay, the splash pad? And try to conclude on the item that we're discussing right now. I don't think we can make a big decision now, but I would definitely recommend that we accept Mr. Hogg's suggestion that we start to look at classification of parks and what kind of amenities these parks have. Definitely the number of people getting into and using the park is very important, probably more than the size. You may have a huge area with nobody in it, and then you have a very small local that services 20,000 people. So this is a difficult one. The other thing is that I definitely would recommend, and I think the board would agree with me, is that we look at the possibility to take care of the MLK Parks bathroom in the framework of the CIP, see what kind of priority we give to that, and add the fact that we recommend to have a grant matching funds from the city, therefore decreasing the value of the investment of the city. It's $225,000. I don't know what kind of grant we can get, but it's a little bit away from the board members here. We are now into technicalities, and we would definitely need to you to come back with some proposals.
Okay.
Is that the consensus among the board members? Yes, sir. CC, I think. Afternoon.
It's not so much, it is so much. The thing is about the usage of the park. You have about 250 a day that uses that park. The structure that is built around it is tearing down. I don't know if it's being cleaned daily, but that's a problem. Dealing with health, with children. Things are stacking on top of things when you go and use it. It's real dangerous. And I hate for anything should happen, and it's been brought to the attention. The last election, the city commissioner came, and she wouldn't get close to it. That's it. So I'm just bringing it to your attention, and it's dangerous, and it's health-wise. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, and I think that the park staff will take notice of this and definitely see if there is actually a dangerous situation and remedy to it. So, Carl, I'm sorry, but it's back to you.
Okay, and just a reminder, at the last meeting, the board did recommend the items to go on CIP, and so you've made that recommendation already that project be on the CIP. But I can bring at the next meeting, item 7, which we've bumped. And we need, it sounds like we want a continuation discussion of this particular item, this project, in terms of how do we actually get it funded?
Yes.
Okay.
But the other thing is that what Mr. Hogue was talking about, which is to try to define the categories of parks and get to some recommendation as to what amenities to have in these parks, and not necessarily based on the size of the park, but more on the usage of the park.
Right.
I would think.
I understand.
So that would be on consideration of future agenda items.
Yes.
Okay. Is there? Yes, Mr. Hampton.
I also noticed, I was walking through the park the other day and noticed that we have these signs out there saying this family is responsible for this park or the park area. Do you know what I'm talking about, those signs?
Adopt a spot sign?
Adopt a park. Have those been updated and or checked on, or do they do, is that routinely people, the families renewing? Because
Yes. I don't know if we can talk much about it because it's not on the agenda, but
right.
Let's put that on the next month, please. Is that okay, Mrs. Spears? To look at that at the next meeting?
yes.
Yes, we are okay with it being on the agenda for the next meeting, but we will be also in the interim be talking with the City Councilwoman Gonzalez.
Sure.
Some of the things that were just mentioned by Mr. Cece, those are some of the other things that we need to talk about, and also with the police chief, because there are some safety issues that don't fall into this board for your concerns, but we will be talking with City Council and with the chief of police about some of the other concerns that we have for safety.
Great, we don't have any objection to
That's
that.
correct.
In fact, we recommend that you go to your city
Yes.
council person because that's where it starts. They are elected and they're supposed to service you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding that we expect you all would make all those decisions, and that we want you to do what you're supposed to do in your role here as Park and Rec, and then the safety aspects of what we're concerned about, we will take those to our city council person and chief
Okay.
of police.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one more comment from Mrs. DiCello.
Yes.
We run out of time.
I just wanted to remind everybody, like Anthony had brought to us about public input on all of the capital projects that's going on right now. The town hall gathering will be Tuesday on March 12th. And I appreciate everyone coming to our meeting, and if you have any other concerns, like with the lake, MLK, any other park, or anything else, please go to these town halls and let your opinions be known. And thank you.
Thank you. That's a good reminder. Any items for the next agenda? No. Well,
I move to adjourn. Is that what you're looking for?
I was looking for a motion to adjourn. Yes.
I move.
Mr. Hampton moves.
Mr. Shello, they just want to know what time the town hall meeting is being held.
Oh, sure. It says 5:30, March 7th,
And it's online too.
and, wait a minute. 5:30, Tuesday, March 12th, at the McNeese Convention Center. That's the town hall. The online forum is March 7th at 7:30.
What time is the one on the 12th?
5:30.
5:30.
So can we adjourn, Carl, or yes, something else?
I don't think we have anything else.
Okay, good. So we had a motion from Mr. Hampton. We have a second.
Second.
Second from the Duderski. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We adjourned.
One more question I had. Yes. Time, sir. Still serving.